club moss, and horsetails. Those are the modern-day descendants of plants that began growing 350 million years ago, in a time period that we now call the Carboniferous era. It was called the Carboniferous era because there was much more carbon in the atmosphere, which meant that the climate was much warmer, which meant that there were little to no polar ice caps, which in turn meant that much of what is now dry land was under shallow seas and brackish swamps. And there were these plants growing in those swamps, ferns and club moss and horsetails. It's fascinating, actually, these plants, because they grow all over the world, and they have evolved very, very little in 350 million years. Even today, they're genetically almost exactly the same as they were back in the Carboniferous era, except that back then, when the Earth was much warmer and all of this stuff, they grew bigger than the trees we have now. So as these plants were growing to these huge heights, they were sucking all of this carbon out of the atmosphere, building it into their cells, changing the climate in the process. They were also absorbing heavy metals, things like mercury and arsenic and lead and cadmium and uranium and other toxic things like sulfur out of the soil and the water, storing it inside of their cells, cleaning up the environment for a whole lot of biodiversity that would soon follow. When they died, they fell over and sank in the swamps. And here's the cool part. 350 million years ago, the bacteria that exist today that are able to decompose things underwater had not yet evolved. So rather than turning back into soil, these plants just stacked up for millions of years. Ocean currents changed, sand and other sediments washed over the plants, and then more plants would grow, and then more sediments and plants. And over millions of years, we get this sort of plant sediment sandwich that over more millions of years became super compressed and turned into coal. So this is why coal is so powerful, that when we break it apart and burn it,